When you hear the word art, what immediately comes to mind? Some of the most common art forms include paintings, films, music, and literature. One lesser thought of artistic mediums are video games, even though they require immense artistic ability to produce. Video game creators are usually referred to as developers rather than artists. Older generations might even disagree that video games should be considered art at all. Why do you think that is? Artistic mediums such as painting and music have been around for over 100 years. Most of the art forms we recognize today are ancient, except for video games. People have been writing books, composing music, and painting fantastic works of art for several millennia. Movies are a bit younger in the grand scheme of things, having shown up around the late 1800s. Though relatively speaking, this is still considered pretty ancient. Video games, however, have only been around since the 70s, at least in a commercial sense. Perhaps it is this recency that gives video games a lack of credibility in the field of art. They lack legitimacy because they haven't been around for very long at all. If only it were that simple. While video games are a fairly new art form to humanity, they are becoming increasingly impressive and ultra-realistic. Video games have undergone a massive metamorphosis in the 50-odd years that they have existed. From the evolution of the technology as we know it, to the various shake-ups in the gaming landscape, leading to what we now know as the Big Three. The Big Three refers to the most influential companies in the gaming space: Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony. In order to fully understand how we got to where we are today, we must first start at the beginning, before these companies dominated the gaming market. It is often debated as to what can truly be cited as the first video game ever created. There are several contenders that go as far back as the late 50s. However, to keep things simple, we will begin our story with the video game that could be considered the catalyst for what would be the very first commercially sold video game. The year is 1962, and a young man by the name of Steve Russell walked the halls of MIT. He was a computer scientist, and thanks to the help of his fellow students, a peculiar computer program was invented. A computer program by the name of Spacewar. Spacewar was created and operated on the DEC PDP-1 minicomputer, meaning that any kind of commercial distribution was out of the question. The PDP-1 computer cost upwards of $100,000, and in the 60s, the average person didn't have much need for a computer in their daily lives. Spacewar would gain its popularity through certain circles on the university campus, primarily by those who needed to use the computer lab. Various students and employees would play Spacewar in their downtime and make adjustments to the game. Eventually, Spacewar would make its way to more PDP-1 computers across the MIT campus. Spacewar had become a school-wide project, a project that did not go unnoticed. Nolan Bushnell was a humble electric engineer, one who had a strong love for fun and innovation that he developed during his time as an amusement park worker. He met a man by the name of Ted Dabney in 1968, and the two quickly became friends. They shared a common interest: creating a pizza parlor filled with electronic games. It was this common interest that led to Bushnell taking his new friend Dabney to the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. It was here, in the computing labs, that Bushnell showed him the computer program Spacewar. Spacewar had become so popular that it was now showing up in other universities. Bushnell and Dabney understood the innovation that Spacewar could bring to the entertainment industry, and with their hopes held high, they began the journey of creating the first commercially sold video game. Spacewar was not a copyrighted program, meaning that anyone could make their own Spacewar program and was more than welcome to do so. They were also more than welcome to profit off of it. So Bushnell and Dabney founded Syzygy Engineering in 1969, with the hopes of creating and selling their own version of Spacewar. The name Syzygy Engineering might not sound relevant now, but it'll begin to take a more familiar form in the future as we continue this series. Bushnell and Dabney worked tirelessly on the project. Dabney created a prototype, while Bushnell looked for a manufacturer who could produce the game on a large scale for distribution. They landed on Nutting Associates, a coin-operated game manufacturer. To Bushnell and Dabney, a coin-operated game was the most logical form for their project to take. Computers were incredibly expensive, so this would cut out the ludicrous costs for the consumer required to operate the game. Through their combined efforts, Bushnell and Dabney finally created Computer Space, the first commercially sold video game ever made. The machine itself looked like it came from the distant future, or at least what people in 1969 imagined the future would look like. It was an odd design, with sparkling paint adorning the round curves of the cabinet itself. It was, no doubt, designed with the intention of sticking out visually to anyone who might be curious enough to deposit a coin. This alien-esque design, combined with the popular gameplay of Space War, would prove to be a commercial failure. Computer Space sold a little over $3 million. Clearly no amount to scoff at, but not enough for Bushnell's personal goals. It wasn't enough to build an entire industry on. The game was just inconvenient. It required players to read instructions to understand how to play, which, in most circumstances, is perfectly reasonable. Computer Space, however, was stationed primarily in bars, which were largely occupied by drunk patrons. Most individuals would have the patience to read the instructions for a game, but drunk people in a bar usually do not. This led to Computer Space selling a little over 1,000 units. A crushing failure. Bushnell didn't want to give up. He knew that video games were the future of entertainment. He knew that he was sitting on a golden idea. All he needed was a true hit, a lethal strike. He needed an Atari. This is our first video in a series of many on the complete history of the gaming industry. Keep on the lookout for part 2 to continue the series. If you liked this video, please leave us a like and subscribe to TechNeo.